Governor Walz. I don't anticipate that the streets will get any safer.
Is she admitting that they're going to make the streets more dangerous by flooding federal agents right after Donald Trump tweeted out that he wants to institute the Insurrection Act? All right, this administration is really struggling. While standing outside of the White House this morning, Donald Trump's hand-picked DHS Secretary Kristi Noem accidentally admits that they are going to make the streets of Minneapolis more and more violent, less safe for the citizens of Minneapolis, anybody living there, if they do not get what they want. Now, this comes in stark contrast to the way that they've been repeatedly lying to the face of the American people in an escalatory fashion. You have to realize the cover-ups are what piss off the American people even more. It's just pouring gasoline on a fire after Renee Nicole Good was shot. It really does parallel George Floyd, roughly 5 years back, not only because of the Minneapolis parallel, that's not even the biggest one, it's the fact that the lack of accountability from the top down is pissing people off even more, and to add on top of that, it feels like the regime at the very top supports and wants to embolden this type of violence, not only from Derek Chauvin, who murdered George Floyd, but also from Jonathan Ross, who murdered Renee Nicole Good. You can see the parallel, you can see the cover-up. Kristi Noem tries to continue lying, but of course, she accidentally says, yeah, the streets of Minnesota and Minneapolis will get more violence. Let me back up, because today was just historically disastrous for the White House. Roughly 24 hours ago, Donald Trump did a meeting about children's health and safety in which he fell asleep during this milk meeting. Watch.
All the wonderful men to the right who worked so hard on this. Peter Welsh, it is a bipartisan issue, and understanding where we are in this country and how important the health of certainly our children are is so important. USDA is posting 2 days.
When Biden did this, it was like a never-ending news cycle. Am I in an alternate reality? Biden didn't ever actually fall asleep like this, but there are moments where he would be closing his eyes and international media would be covering it like a new world war just started. Like, what the hell? Now, Donald Trump does this every single day, and there's no call out. There's no reciprocation of the same energy. We are the only people that are doing that, and that is why if you appreciate the work we do, you should drop a like. Make sure you subscribe to the Adam Mockler feed. We will continue to be the variable they didn't expect. They've intimidated the media, sued colleges, sued law firms, but we will continue to push back and show the truth. All right, to continue, on top of that, this morning, Donald Trump met with Machado, who is the leader in Venezuela that opposed the Maduro regime. She's the person who should be in power, ideally. She's the number 2 to the person who rightfully won the last election, and she's pro-democracy, genuinely a pro-democracy leader, who obviously we don't agree on with everything, but she is way better than Maduro and Delcy Rodriguez. She met with Donald Trump today and quite literally gave him the Nobel Peace Prize that she had. President Trump will be keeping the Nobel Peace Prize he received from Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado, a senior White House official tells me. Per the committee earlier today, quote, a medal can change owners, but the title of a Nobel Peace Prize laureate cannot. I just want to show this in stark contrast with the way Sean Penn gave his Oscar to Zelensky. Just think about the difference here. He gave his hard-earned Oscar to Zelensky, the world leader, because he wants to show support. He wants to show solidarity. Meanwhile, Donald Trump basically extracted this Nobel Peace Prize from Machado the same way he's extracting oil from Venezuela. Just the stark contrast needs to be shown.
This is for you.
Oh, Sean.
Yes.
No.
Please.
That is yours.
No, I feel terrible outside. It's just a symbolic, silly thing.
Yes, but
if I know this is here with you, then I'll feel better and stronger for the fight.
So great to honor, but until we will.
When you win, bring it back to Malibu.
So incredibly nice, and just a stark contrast. I mean, Sean Penn is not a politician, but he'd be a better president than Donald Trump any day, more empathetic, and lead with actual grace. All right, this brings us on to Kristi Noem. I wanted to set the stakes of what's been going on in this administration. It's been a mess full of Trump falling asleep, full of regime change failing, the same regime still being up, and then Donald Trump extracting oil, and now these ICE raids are truly a crack in the wall. Like, I don't know how to describe it other than there is a massive shift in public sentiment against ICE and against the Trump administration. ICE was already unpopular, but you can see in the polling after the shooting of Renee Nicole Good, people are now like, what the absolute hell? And then after all the videos we're getting, video after video after video, which we'll talk about in a moment, people are doubly like, what the actual fuck is going on in this country? Here is Kristi Noem, straight up running defense for the Trump admin. Now, she slips in a moment and admits it, but first, she tries to claim that the ICE agents are following the law. This is the fundamental problem. This is where the problem lies. The inability to ever admit when any ICE agent does anything wrong will be the downfall of this administration. They will continually play defense for ICE agents cracking the ribs of elderly 79-year-olds, pepper spraying protesters who are in their late 80s over and over, just abusing U.S. citizens, which we'll talk about in 1 second, and they can't admit it, which only inflames tensions.
Secretary Noem. Do you believe there are any cases in Minnesota where the ICE agents have gone too far?
Our ICE agents are following the law and running their operations according to training. Last night, what we saw was 3 individuals weaponize shovels and brooms and attack an ICE officer that had to defend himself. So we're hopeful that we don't see that again, that these protesters and violent rioters will be held accountable for.
I also think domestic terrorists should be held accountable, but that includes the domestic terrorists with badges and guns. Listen, nobody is defending the guy who was trying to kill the ICE agents with the shovel. Him getting shot was proportionate force. He was going around genuinely trying to harm them. That's not what people are defending. There are thousands, hundreds of thousands of protesters across the country who want to see change, and there are thousands of videos of ICE agents literally hurting U.S. citizens. I mean, there's the one of the 79-year-old getting their ribs cracked, but I think the more recent ones show U.S. citizens getting pushed out of the street, pushed into the street as a bus comes. They ended up being fine, but there's another one of some disabled woman getting her seatbelt cut and getting ripped out of her car. They've knocked down doors, they've broken windows, they shot out the eye of a 21-year-old U.S. citizen. And of course, it's not any more tragic when it happens to a U.S. citizen than when it happens to an immigrant or someone who's here illegally. I'm not trying to say there's a distinction there. I just think it's important to point out ICE is so out of control, they're hitting U.S. citizens daily as collateral because they just don't give a shit. Kristi Noem continues to lie.
Secretary Noem, are you okay with federal agents and officers violating people's Fourth Amendment rights by asking for papers without reasonable suspicion?
Every single action that our ICE officers take is according to the law and following protocols that we have used for years.
Every single action? How about this? Since ICE's inception, there have been 2,000 reported cases of sexual abuse. If we're going to follow Kristi Noem's logic that every single action ICE officers take is according to the law, she's going to justify that the same way J.D. Vance justified that, saying they have absolute immunity. And I can almost guarantee, I don't have the study on, I can almost guarantee over the past 3 months, somebody has been sexually abused by an ICE agent in a position of power. This happens all the time. Again, 2,000 cases at ICE. Power dynamics when it comes to law enforcement oftentimes result in very, very sick stuff. So Kristi Noem is justifying that. She's saying that's okay. There should be no investigation. Now, this is the clip where Kristi Noem essentially says she doesn't anticipate the streets getting any more safe or any more peaceful. This comes on the same day Trump said he is going to institute the Insurrection Act. So just think about this. Trump says he's going to institute the Insurrection Act, which mobilizes the U.S. military onto the streets, and they can be weaponized against U.S. citizens. She then says if the Democrats don't bow down, the streets won't get any safer. For who? For the protesters? For the U.S. citizens trying to get to work? Trying to drop their kids off at school? Take a listen.
Will it lead to more deadly killings in Minnesota if the Insurrection Act is invoked?
If anything doesn't change with Governor Walz, I don't anticipate that the streets will get any safer or more peaceful. Governor Walz and his leadership team need to come to us and find out how we can work together like we have in many other states. We didn't see this kind of reaction in Louisiana when we ran our operations exactly how we are running them in Minneapolis, but we had a very different response because we had leaders that were working with us. If you saw our operations in Florida, extremely successful. In Minneapolis so far, we brought hundreds of criminals off the streets that were dangerous to society and dangerous to that community.
First of all, don't believe a word that comes out of this woman's mouth. She said that Renee Nicole Good was a domestic terrorist like 30 minutes after she was shot. When they were still pulling Renee Nicole Good's body out of the car, she was saying that Renee is a domestic terrorist. But secondly, the reality is Democrats, Democratic governors, Democratic mayors, they've been willing to coordinate with ICE for years. Under Biden, we didn't have this problem. Under Obama, we didn't have this problem. The problem is the massive surge of undertrained law enforcement into these oftentimes majority Latino communities. They like racially target Latino communities with undertrained people in masks. And now they've surged so many federal agents into Minneapolis. The rumor is they outnumber the actual local law enforcement, meaning there is literally an occupying force on the ground. CNN airs a compilation of all of the different times ICE has abused U.S. citizens over the past 48 to 72 hours. I'm not going to play the entire thing, but I think it's worth kind of just walking through this compilation. In this first video, an ICE agent pushes a U.S. citizen into oncoming traffic. The U.S. citizen stands up, and you see a bus had to stop right at that moment. He could have gotten seriously injured. Maybe he should have defended himself. I mean, he's standing there recording. You shouldn't stand in front of a vehicle, obviously. It's just, they will be assholes and probably run you over, but you also shouldn't push people into the streets. Then they run, tackle this person to the ground, clearly abusive. We can continue to scroll through this video. In this one, they crack the windows of a disabled woman, clip her seatbelt, and pull her out as she's screaming. Of course, the Renee Nicole Good video. What about this one of a U.S. citizen being pinned to the ground? Then, Kristi Noem said,
an already volatile situation.
If they conduct violent activities against law enforcement, if they impede our operations, that's a crime, and we will hold them accountable to those consequences.
Social media has been flooded with an onslaught of videos showcasing the rising tensions between ICE and protesters in Minneapolis.
Multiple videos of people getting shot in the face. This one really pissed me off. This one right here. This pissed me off.
Consequences.
Sorry, that one really made me mad, but to continue later on.
Dangerous rioter who had previously assaulted law enforcement. In September, officers shot pepper balls from the rooftop of an ICE facility down at a protest in Illinois, hitting a pastor. DHS released a statement saying that the agitators ignored verbal warnings and were impeding operations by blocking an ICE vehicle from leaving the facility.
The agitator of a literal pastor on the ground, a literal pastor who just wants to help. Absolutely absurd. Here's Kristi Noem continuing.
Do you think you have any plans to pull out of Minnesota?
No plans to pull out of Minnesota. We are.
How would you describe what you were seeing on the ground there? Would you describe it as an insurrection, and do you believe the president should invoke the Insurrection Act?
I describe it as violent and a violation of the law in many places. I discussed with the president this morning several things that we are dealing with under the department and different operations. We did discuss the Insurrection Act. He certainly has the constitutional authority to utilize that. My hope is that this leadership team in Minnesota will start to work with us to get criminals off the streets.
Yes, I agree. Let's get criminals off the streets. Can that include criminals with a badge and a gun? Can that include people who are held to a higher standard because they have more power? Please, just be consistent for one moment. They act like we support the murder of Laken Riley, the 19-year-old who was tragically murdered by an undocumented immigrant who was an actual criminal, actually a murderer, terrible human being. He was a gang member. F that, you can deport him. Nobody's going to defend him. They act like we will defend him, and we won't. But they will actually turn around and defend murderers just because they have a badge and a gun. Make it make sense. I'm going to leave it there. I love you all. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.